If you were here last week, we talked about really a theme that connects to where we are at as a church right now. We are in the middle of the sign-ups of what we believe to be the most important part of community, and that's connect groups. And that is, for those of you that don't know or are new with us this morning, a connect group really is a place to connect relationally with people, but ultimately to connect deeper in our relationship with God. And we believe that our connection with people really is what supports and undergirds and guards and secures and even deepens our relationship with God. Because if you were here last week, we talked about the contrast of connection. And while we were in this teaching, I kind of felt internally that because I didn't get through my whole message, this is probably going to be a 3-week series. I felt the juice. I felt like there was like a marinade coming on me. And I'm like, this is going to be a 3-week marinade. And then the last week's going to be awesome because the last week is actually when the semester, the Connect Group semester begins. That's October 1st. And so like Rachel said, we're back at Carlton. Don't miss it. I want to welcome some of the new married couples, by the way. I know Dawn and Naomi. And I think I saw the Castiglias in the house somewhere back there. Welcome. And I don't know, do we have the Sorbies here? Do we have them here? We don't have them here. Well, welcome. They're just running a little late probably today, so we welcome them. But 3 married couples in the last, I don't know if I forgot anybody. Who? Yeah, but they're not here, so I'll welcome them when they get back from their 3.5-week baller honeymoon. But we in this series, I really felt like it would be a 3-week series, and I just felt like it was God's way of hijacking the message. If you weren't here, it's juicy. You got to listen to it. You know, I'll offend you in it. I talk about all kinds of. Somebody told my wife, "Man, you weren't there on." She had to go out. I guess she had to take care of harvest, and she's like, "When you leave, Sean just runs. He says really dumb things." And I'm like, "No, you just notice that I say dumb things when she's gone. You don't notice that I say dumb things all the time." But yeah, you got to listen to it. It's on the podcast. Really encourage you in light of this. It will bring context to what we're talking about. I will do a little bit of a recap for you, and so I want to just jump into Acts 2. Verse 42. By the way, if you're signing up for a Connect group at the end of the experience, just go into the lobby, visit the white table. Everyone say white table. White table, okay? Visit the white table, and there'll be someone there to help you to sign up, get connected. There is a Connect group for you, and I know that it will encourage you. Acts 2, verse 42. Acts 2, verse 42. We talked about last week this being the ingredient list. This being the ingredient list for success in the beginning stages of the birth of the church as we know it. This is the ingredient list, I believe, the four-part ingredient list to make to create the greatest movement in one's life. This is the ingredient list when it comes to wanting to advance the kingdom the most in and through our life. And it's Acts 2, verse 42, describing that all the believers, say all with me because it's all believers. It's not just a few, it's all believers when they understand their role, all believers, devoted. Everyone say devoted. It's a very important word. Devoted. They didn't just have acquaintances. They didn't just once in a while. They didn't just do it when it was convenient. You know what devotion means? It's doing something when it's not convenient for you. It means driving 40 minutes for relationships sometimes, 20 minutes for a relationship. It means paying your bus fare or paying an Uber sometimes to build relationship, because that's the only thing that you're going to carry with you when you die is the equity and the investment that you put into relationships in life. How did you have your love game on the earth? What was your love game like? What was it like while you were here? Did you just let convenience drive you, or let inconvenience allow you to build godly kingdom relationships that would advance your life and other people's lives? They were devoted. Keyword devoted. They were devoted. That word for devoted, before we move on, I want to just break this down one more time for you. That word devoted, it means to persist, to be intently engaged in. It means to persevere with unrelenting continuance. Do you hear that? It means to persevere with unrelenting continuance, whether it's for marriage, whether it's for business relationships, whether it's for within the church context, whether it's for community, friendships, family. Man, no matter what goes, hell or high water, even if I don't like you, I'm going to love you. It means I'm going to pursue you with unrelenting. I'm going to devote myself, my heart to you, even when you give me nothing. Unrelenting continuance. Do we have those kind of relationships in our life? I hope we do, and I hope we continue to develop those kinds of relationships. I mentioned, it's impossible for you to love everybody the same in the sense of how much time you give them, how much emotional investment you give them, how much interaction you give them, because we have a lot of acquaintances, but we need to find our tribe. We need to find our inner circle and community, and often we find that in context when we start facilitating and joining facilitated environments like connect groups to find those people. Think about how you found your wife. Maybe you found her in a bad context. Maybe you found her in a good context. You probably found her with people, is what I'm trying to say. You probably didn't find her all alone, sitting somewhere in a building by herself. She was probably in the context of people. What I'm trying to say is that people make a world of difference towards your purpose. It's all about people. You know, when I was praying earlier, I kept hearing this phrase, love and power. Love and power. And I kept feeling like what Jesus was saying to me is that so many people want power to move their situation for the better, but they don't want to love their situation to move it from power, to move it on behalf of power. They don't want to love it. They don't want to love. So for example, they want their boss to get fired and get a new boss. They want their coworker to get fired and get a new coworker. They want their job to change. They want to take the power in their own hands and just, if I could just take power into my own hands and move something, it will all be good. But what if you loved something? What if you loved that boss you didn't like very much, and you did the opposite of what you felt? You watch the kind of power that would begin to move through you. When you love those that are struggling in some sort of addiction or, habitual behavior that's destroying their life, when you love somebody, I'm telling you, that is what turns the table for them. That's what actually releases the power that they need to overcome and succeed. It's not just saying, hey, I'm going to take control of the situation. No, it's love and power. Power comes through love. The power that you need to move the thing that you're trying to move right now, the deal, whatever it is, I'm telling you, it could be your answer lies within how are you loving the situation, how are you loving your season, how are you loving the people involved, how are you loving and going above and beyond to do often what you don't feel like doing that feels inconvenient to showcase the love of God, because that's what's going to release power to change the situation. You hearing me? You're too hot, aren't you? All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. So to teaching, they had a devotion to learning. They had a devotion. I just discovered this, and man, I feel like a late bloomer. I feel like a total, this is weird. Josh just introduced me to this app called Audible. Ever heard Audible? I don't know where I was living, but it is like a dream. I am like eating up. I mean, I go to the gym. Whatever I'm doing, I'm listening to audiobooks. And it's totally like amazing. I just didn't even know, I didn't know it was there. I know audiobooks. I mean, I know about audiobooks, but man, you got to get Audible. It's awesome. All that to say is that how are you investing in yourself day after day in the area of learning and teaching? Because they had devoted themselves to teaching. They devoted themselves to learning the ways of the kingdom, to learning. You want to transform life? Don't do the same thing you've done for the last 10 years that didn't bring you any transformation. Add something to the equation that you're not adding. You're sick of the mundane. Start learning something new. Start teaching yourself. Start learning the ways of God in a way that you never have before. Maybe you grew up around church. Maybe you grew up around religion and you're stunted and you don't even really know where your faith is at. I'd challenge you, devote yourself to some teaching, good teaching for a season. Watch what begins to happen in your life. Watch what begins to happen in your life. I might need one of those paper towels, somebody, at some point before I start sweating on people up here. Let's go back here. All believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to what? Is it on there? And to fellowship. Okay, well, let's go. Let's try that again. Okay, that was weak. All believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to? Yeah. Paraphrase, connect groups. Connecting. Really, that's what it is. Connecting. Some of you have a really hard time making friends. How do I know this? Because you have no friends. So try to facilitate an environment for yourself where you're around people where maybe you can begin to make some friends. Because I'm telling you, the friends that you have right now and the people that you most associate with at some level will determine where you go in the next 5 years. It's a statistic. Thank you very much. I need one of those like white handkerchiefs, like a wave. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, connecting, to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. 4 ingredients for a move of God. You want a move of God in your life? 4 ingredients. So simple, eh? It's so simple. You guys, these are the 4 steps. You want to see the kingdom advance in your life in a powerful way? Pray. Build kingdom community. Learn. Invest in yourself. Devote yourself to growing in the ways of God. And keep Jesus at the center by taking part in what the Bible calls the Lord's Supper. In other words, keep remembering day after day why you're in this whole thing to begin with. That He died for you and resurrected to give you new life. So simple. The gospel is so simple. You want a move of God in your life, devote yourself to these things. With what? Unrelenting continuance. Last week we talked about, really it was my first point of 3, and we talked about the contrast of conception. Everyone say conception. And if you remember when I broke it down, I brought us back to the beginning. When Adam and Eve were created, Adam and Eve were not created the same. And there's something about focusing on the contrast of conception to understand how we are to position ourselves to do what God's called us to do. God did not create man the same way He created woman. God created man from the dust of the earth, and God created woman out of a rib of the man. I said that's why men love ribs so much. They want back what was taken from them. You know? And so we talked about understanding the order of how things are conceived often will determine the trajectory of your life. Although you're not a victim to your past, you're not a victim of how you started, it often plays a part and a role in the trajectory and the path you take in life, especially outside of the grace of God, right? We're conditioned a certain way from our environment. So it's very important in understanding the contrast of connection, which I'm talking about relationship. And we talked about how, if you turn up the contrast on a picture, it makes, especially on a black and white picture, the black's blacker and the white's whiter. And I used the illustration of Harley and Jean. That not just in color, but in personality. The contrast is way up, and you see, wow, it's like Harley is like this explosive atom bomb, and Jean is like this calm and collected, I don't know what would be calm and collected, like just or what? Oh, I don't know. That's a little bit negative. But it's just this amazing it's this amazing contrast, right? And you only can see the contrast when your eyes begin to compare. This is where comparison is okay. You look at someone, and you look at someone else, you say, wow, okay, I see the contrast because I'm actually comparing you to you. When I look at you, I see all these attributes. I look at you, I see all these attributes, and I'm comparing you together, and that's what creates a beautiful contrast. And this is the contrast of connection. But to understand the power of connection and the contrast of connection, we have to understand the design, the way that we were designed, man and woman. And I said Genesis 2, verse 18. Go there with me. Genesis 2, verse 18. I'm just doing a little bit of a recap here. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper who is just right for him." And I said, oftentimes when you see this word man in the beginning of Genesis, it's actually a word that describes mankind in general. It's not just man, it's mankind in general. God had always planned in his mind that it wouldn't be good enough for someone just to be rocking it alone. God does not like islands. He likes cities. I'm using that as an illustration. He doesn't want you to be disconnected. He wants you to be a part of something bigger than yourself. So it's not good for man to be alone. You need people. You need people. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people that they want to, they want to do this and they want to do that, and they have all these big dreams and aspirations, and it's like I ask them the question, so how's your community? And they have no community. And they refuse to get into community because probably somewhere in their life they've been hurt by it. But guess what? People are stupid. And they will always hurt you. They will always fail you. That's why 1 Corinthians says, get your love game on. Because you're going to only learn to love when people hurt you. You don't learn to love when it's all good in the hood, man. You learn to love when people are backstabbing you, when they betray you, when they disappoint you. That's when you learn to love. That's when you learn to love. And so guess what? If they have hurt you, guess what? It's one more step in the process in teaching you how to love again when you keep getting hurt over and over again. And if you want to build relationship, you got to love through the storm. You got to love through the struggle. You got to love through the moments that just seem intense and hard and you're offended at the relationship. You got to love through it. That's how you build real relationship. That's how you can pursue with unrelenting continuance is when you have your love game on. It's love and then power. You got to love, because if you don't love and you have all the gifts and you're awesome and you sound great, Paul says you sound annoying like a clanging cymbal. You could prophesy, you could have the best gifts in the world, but if you don't love, then you sound annoying. You ever heard what a cymbal sounds like? It's crashing in your face. Imagine that over and over again. It's all day long, ear. Some of you, that's what you are to people. I'm not focusing on you, but that's what you are to people because you haven't learned to love through hardship. You're letting your past dictate your present. So I talked about the contrast of conception. And in verse 18 of chapter 2, it says this, and the Lord God said, it is not good, beautiful, that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable. Another translation, opposite to him. In other words, it's more beautiful when there's relationship when you're just alone than when you're just alone. He said it's not good. The word is not beautiful. It's not beautiful for you to be by yourself. It's not beautiful for you to have no church community. It's not beautiful for you to have no relational community. It's not good for you to have no good, deep friends in your life. It's not beautiful. How many want to be beautiful? Try connecting in relationship in this season in a way that you never have before. Because in God's eyes, it went from all creation is good to it's now very good. When God created man, he then said, now it's very good. It wasn't just good. All the animals are good. Now it's very good. In other words, now it's beautiful. This is the way. Companionship, relationship, connection. This is what it's all about. We talked about conception. We have, obviously, biology, and then we have theology. Say these two words with me. Biology and theology. Our theology is, obviously, you know what biology is, really the study of life on many different levels, but theology really, in essence, is the study of God and his nature. And our theology, what we think about God, what we believe about God, will determine what we believe about our biology, and in some ways, our behavior. I love this. I heard this quote on Instagram. It just rocked me, just the way that it was said. Jen Johnson, you guys know who that is from Bethel Worship, said this quote. I guess she was speaking at this conference. She said, God was not confused when he created you. Let that hang for a little bit. God was not confused when he created you. God was not confused when he created you. And if God is not the author, the Bible says, of confusion, Guess what? Every time we're confused about what we are and who we are, it's one more step of a wrestle to figure out the destiny that God's called us to have. And there is a war over your soul. There's a war over your destiny. The devil will do everything he can to get you to not ever come into the fullness of your purpose. And the first thing he'll confuse is your identity. You're not who everybody thinks you are. You're not who people say you are. So we have our biology and we have our theology. And our theology often will determine what we believe about our biology on lots of different levels. And I'm talking today about really the contrast of capacity. That everybody has a different capacity. You know that to be true, right? Your capacity is not my capacity. My capacity is not your capacity. You can't compare yourself to me, and I can't compare myself to you. There's times when I look at guys like Tim, and I begin to envy him, like the way that he's able to do certain things, and the way he's able to think about certain things, and the way he's able to engineer certain things. He's a very smart guy. And I look at him, and I'm like, man, there's so much good in Tim. But I'm not Tim, and Tim is not me. And he has a different capacity, and that's what makes the relationship beautiful, is when there's a contrast between two capacities, like two containers. His container and my container together make up a bigger container for heaven's deposit. And if I don't have connection with someone else's capacity, then I'm missing out on a bigger level of blessing. I can't have a baby as Sean Gaby as a man by myself. My capacity has to go into her capacity and has to create something where a bigger capacity can be created, and that's called a baby. I can't do it myself. But when capacities collide and they coincide, guess what? Something new can go inside. When my capacity and her capacity coincides together and collide, then God's like, okay, now I can put something new on the inside. So now take that out of marriage and put it into friendship, business partnership, relationships. Your capacity and someone else's capacity besides you. Create space for God to do something that he can't just do in you, but has to do in both of you together. This is why there's power in community. This is why there's a wrestle, you guys. This is why there's a wrestle over your life to get into community. Because the enemy knows he's screwed. He's done with. If people come together with a heart and a mind to serve one purpose, he gets freaked out because he's like, man, when now imagine all of their capacities together to believe God, all their capacities together make up a massive container where I can just pour out something so mind-blowing that's going to shape-shift the atmosphere and environment around their lives. That's why he's scared. That's why he doesn't like community. That's why there's a war. That's why you want to isolate yourself. One of the greatest temptations you'll ever only have in your life is isolation. That will be the most consistent thing you struggle with, because every time things don't go good in your life and you screw up, you make a mistake, the first thing you want to do, right, is be by yourself to recoup a little bit, right? That's the enemy's tactic. His greatest tactic is to keep you from bringing your contrast into someone else's contrast, or your capacity to someone else's capacity, to create this beautiful contrast that God can bless. There's a war. There's a war. I learn my capacity every day as a father, as a husband, as a leader. I always learning my capacity. You know, I was thinking about the different jobs that I've had over the years, and I always remember this one job that I had. I was a secretary. I was a secretary for Larry's driving school. And I was like a brand new believer. And I was like wild. And so I crazy things were happening. I mean, I had guys coming into the office. I remember this guy came in one time. He was one of the owners, and he had a severe case of hemorrhoids. And he came in, and he knew, because, I mean, I was having encounters in the office. And I probably wasn't balancing it right, because I was a new believer at this time, relatively. And I was having crazy encounters in the office, because then what do you do by the phones all day? It was, like, so boring. It's just not my capacity, you know? So I was, I was stewarding my time in a different way at times. And this guy comes in. I remember he had a severe case of hemorrhoids and couldn't sit down. And we're talking about healing and stuff. He's like, pray for me. So I remember this story of this is why I was here. You know, I'm here for these moments. And I'm sitting and I'm praying for one of the owners. My hand's on his butt. And I'm praying like, power into his butthole to heal these hemorrhoids in Larry's driving school. Just even the name, the whole scenario. But I think about the jobs, the opportunities I've had to pray for people in the job, because I made it my quest. Every job that I ever had after I gave my life to Jesus, it was all about a mission field for me. All about change. I had people, coworkers, come up to me all the time, be like, man, there's like an aura on you. There's like an aura. I'm like, exactly. There is an aura on me. He's Jesus, man. He is my aura. He's my light. That's what you're seeing, and it always opened up doors. But I realized that even though maybe I didn't have the capacity in the natural to do the jobs that I did for a season, I had a God-given capacity to do what God wanted me to do in every season. And so do you. You might feel like you're in a season right now where you don't have the capacity to do what you're doing in the sense of like, it's not long-term. It's kind of a short-term thing, but God's given you a capacity. It's called God's capacity. It's called God's limitation, and he's given that to you to occupy a part of that job space, that workspace, a different way so he can promote you. Are you hearing me this morning? I think about my wife and I's capacity together as husband and wife. I don't know if you guys, for those of you that are married in the house, if you have kids, when your kids puke, who does what? I know for us, I'm the puke cleaner. Any husbands are the puke cleaners? Any husbands? Yeah, I'm the puke cleaner, okay. And then who's the one that consoles the child? Like, was it the woman or the man? Okay, so they're a different equation. But yeah, so like when I get, if I'm up in the middle of the night, I have no grace. Like, I'm not really a morning person. I am like, I don't want to get into deep conversation in the morning when I first get up. And in the middle of the night, I woke up last week in my main floor. I woke up. I ran down my staircase. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Jumped over. I was like adrenaline. I jumped over. We have this like big 5x2, whatever, 5x3 foot like board that goes in front of our staircase so my daughter doesn't fall through the cracks and slip to her death. My daughter Harvest, because we have holes in we have like, it's all open, our staircase, and so she'd literally fall to her death and become a quadriplegic if we didn't have that there. So anyways, we have this thing there, and I'm like, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm thinking that one of my children is crawling under my oven, and I only have a little, I'm really letting you into my world right now. I only have like a little bit of time before the last bit of their legs goes under there forever, and they're gone forever. So I wake up, ask my wife, she was in the other kid's bedroom, I don't even know. I wake up, and I run, they're under the oven, and I run down, I bolt down. I have like my staircase is like it's like it goes like this. So I'm like, and I'm in like sleep mode, you guys. I'm like adrenaline. It is like superhero level speed. I jump over the thing, leap over, and I get to my oven, and I realize my oven is not even an oven that's on the ground, which is not even possible. My oven's in the wall. And it took me like literally like 20 seconds to be like, okay, because my child, like I couldn't grab my child from underneath the cabinet because he wasn't there, And anyways, this is my life. I don't know why I'm telling you this. This is totally random, wasting my time right now. There was a reason why I was telling you this. But anyways, oh yeah, I know why I was telling you that. Because when I get up in the middle of the night and my kids are sick, I'm not the one that has the emotional grace to deal with their sobbing and crying and go and take them in the shower. I can just brainlessly wipe the puke off the ground. Spray, it takes no brain, no emotional capacity. I know that in those moments we have a different kind of capacity. She has the compassion. How are you feeling about this right now? How are you feeling? You're giving me a weird look. She has the compassion, and I have the cleaning skills. Anyways, we all have a different capacity. Let's go back to Genesis. This is where I want to land right here. I want to land right here today. Genesis 1, verse 26. Genesis 1, verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image. I love this because all of creation began with a contrast of personality, a contrast of not just him. That in God's view, God is three parts, and those three parts make him one. And there's a great relationship between all three parts, just like you are created with a body, soul, and spirit. When all three cooperate and they're in relationship and they understand their capacity together, the contrast looks beautiful, and that beautiful contrast looks like health and happiness. when all three are working in conjunction with one another. And so God started this whole thing with our, not just me. Our. Let us make man in our Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Three parts making them one together. There's a greater sense of strength when two become one. Two become one represents the image of God. Not just in marriage, so to speak, but even in friendship. When two become one in vision, become one in heart, become one in mind, there's a greater strength than just the individual by themselves. This is the power of connection. Let us make man in our image according to our what? Help me out here. Likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God, I love this. So God created mankind in his own image, male and female, he created them. Then, listen to this, verse 28, this is so key. It does not say he created man and then blessed him. He's speaking about mankind right now, male and female. Then it says this, then a blessing came on them. So God created man in his own image, male and female, he created them. Verse 28, then God blessed them, which is really the contrast. It's what's blessed in life is the contrast of capacity. When two come together, when there's two capacities to fill, there is a greater blessing on relationship than there ever will be on you as an individual. I don't think you're hearing me this morning. We have to get this, that there is a blessing missing in your life if you do not have relationship. There's a blessing missing. There is a greater strength of blessing missing when there is no relationship. This God is saying in this passage, the contrast is what's blessed. What makes you different is what attracts my blessing. And when you dwell together and when you come together, that is what's magnetic to my blessing. And then watch this, God said to them, then he gave them the commission, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Only then, when you're connected, can you fulfill the greatest missions of life. Only when you're connected in relationship, doing life together, can you fulfill the purposes that I've planned for your life. Only then that some of you are one step away from your purpose because you're one step away from relationship. The relationship that's around your life right now is connected to your purpose. And you're just one step away of coming into the knowledge of what your purpose destined for. And it all has to do with the relationships that you've yet to really deepen in your life. Because the contrast of connection is what's blessed. When these capacities come together, like I said in verse 31, then God saw everything that he made, and indeed it was very good. It wasn't just good, it was very good. All of a sudden, it was so good that it deserved a greater blessing. It was so good that it deserved a blessing that would then release you into your commission, into your calling. It was so good that now I can put purpose in you. It wasn't just good like the cattle that I designed and raised up. It wasn't just good like the animals that I created. It was so good that now you can do what you're called to do. You can do what you're called to do. Let's go to Psalms 133 before we close here. I want to read this to you because I feel like this exemplifies. I really thought this morning, this was one of my points, remember, from last week, and I was really going to add some key things, and I just felt like I was to camp on these two passages specifically, the creation process of Genesis 1 chapter, focusing on 28, about the blessing that comes on the contrast and the different capacities coming together. But then also in Psalms 133, I think we see it again. We see this blessing manifest again. Let's read it together. Don't be distracted by everybody up here. Verse 1, behold, let's watch this. Let's look at the screen together. Behold, how good. Say it with me. How good. So it's good, right? Like, how good is it? How good is it? How pleasant. How good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in Unity. Now, in the original manuscript, the word unity actually is not even there, but let's focus on the word together, because that word together actually means, in one way, unity, okay? The context of this, because we say it a lot, right? We say it in different contexts. How good and how pleasant is it when brothers dwell together? That's the phrase, when they dwell together. Let's talk about the word dwell for a second. You know what that word dwell means? It means to remain. It means it's not like a one-time deal. It's not like we dwell together in a worship context like this on Sunday morning, and then we go back to our normal lives and pretend nothing happened. It's not like that. It's about connection long term. How good and pleasant is it when brothers dwell, when they remain, the word is actually abide with each other. Kind of like how we abide with God and he abides in us, that the Father is the vine dresser, Jesus is the vine, and we are the branches. We abide in him and he abides in us, and as a result, we bear what? Fruit. Kind of like that. In this context, he's saying how good and how pleasant is it when brothers dwell, when they remain together, when they are devoted to each other, when they pursue each other with unrelenting continuance. How good and pleasant, it gets my attention, is what he's saying. Gets my attention. Verse 2, it is like the precious oil of consecration poured on the head, coming down on the beard, even the beard of Aaron, who was a priest, coming down upon the edge of his priestly robes, consecrating the whole body. So it's not just something that touches you a little bit. The picture and the illustration is this: when you dwell, when you are in connection, when you are in relationship, when you have one purpose, one mind, that glory, that presence of God, that favor, it saturates all of you. Did you hear what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying here? It's not just about, okay, I'm in a relationship, I got a good friendship, I got whatever, and one part of my life is blessed. No, when you dwell, when you have connection, one heart, one mind, it literally engulfs you. The favor of God, it engulfs your life. You start seeing the favor on your kids. You start seeing the favor on your jobs. You start seeing the favor in the workplace. You start acting different. You start sounding different. You start remembering when you're in hard situations, what would so-and-so do? Why? Because you're in relationship with so-and-so. You start to remember, and you start to be someone that you normally aren't, because you're in connection and you're in relationship. So how good and pleasant is it when we dwell? So it's like the oil comes down upon Aaron's head. It runs down his beard. It runs down onto his shoulders. And theologians believe that the whole picture was that it would go down all the way to his ankles. The picture was that it's going to touch every part of your life, every part of your body, every part of what you do. Verse 3. It is like the dew. Then he draws another illustration, because in contexts like this, they'll actually draw illustrations to even exaggerate a point further, okay? So the psalmist, David, is exaggerating a point even further, and he's saying, okay, it is like the dew of Mount Hermon coming down on the hills of Zion. Let's stop there for a second. Let's just look at this a little more deep. He's saying that dwelling together as brothers, remaining, pursuing relationship, is likened to the dew coming down from Mount Hermon. Now, if you know, Mount Hermon is like 9,000 feet in the air, always snow-capped. It's beautiful. It represents God in a lot of ways. It's really high and mighty, okay? And the word Hermon, you know what it means? Devotion. Wait a minute. What does Acts 2, verse 42 say? These disciples, the believers, devoted. Come on, say it with me. Devoted. They devoted themselves to teaching, fellowship, the Lord's Supper, fellowship, prayer. Now we see, okay, how good and pleasant is it when brothers dwell together? It's like the dew that comes, or like the oil comes on the whole body, blesses the whole body, power of relationship. It is likened to the dew that comes from this massive mountain that's beautiful, that everyone loves. That means devotion. And from devotion, watch what it says. This is how I want you to read this passage from now on. From devotion, it comes down on the hills of what? Zion. Now, Zion on multiple levels and layers represents the house of God. It represents the kingdom of God. And in the natural, there's over 100 miles of distance between the top of Mount Hermon and in this specific area, this region. So it's an illustration to show you that from devotion, when devotion to relationship is at the top, what's going to happen is you're going to build the kingdom in a way that you've never thought you could build the kingdom before. But devotion is what it takes. And there's no devotion until there's hardship. There's no devotion until you get mobile as a church. There's no devotion until things don't go the way that you want them to go. Devotion is proven in the fire. Devotion is proven when everything's saying against you, coming against you, and saying there's no reason to keep going. You might as well give up. That's when devotion is proven. How good and pleasant is it when brothers dwell together in a place of unity. They remain, they abide with each other. It is like the oil that comes down over the whole body, touches every part of our lives. It is likened to what devotion looks like when it's in the right space. From devotion, you have the advancement of the kingdom. This was the ingredient list of Acts 2, verse 42. They devoted themselves, and as a result, the greatest movement that has ever hit the earth.